I've always loved taking pictures, nothing fancy, just a cheap old film camera I picked up at a flea market in Vermont while visiting my cousin. It had character, that heavy, cold metal feel that modern cameras don't have. The guy selling it said it once belonged to a local newspaper photographer, but he didn't say much else. I didn't ask. The first time I used it was a quiet Sunday morning. Fresh snow outside, soft light coming through the windows, the kind of day where everything looks like a postcard. I took a picture of my living room, the fireplace, the old couch, a coffee mug on the table, just capturing the calm. A few days later, when I got the film developed, I sat in my car flipping through the prints. Everything looked normal, except one photo. In the living room shot, my living room, there was a shape standing in the far left corner. Not a clear figure, not even a face, just the outline of a woman, featureless, slightly blurred like she'd been moving. But here's the thing. I knew that corner. I knew that exact moment. There was no one in my house when I took that picture. At first, I thought maybe it was a trick of the shadows or my own reflection caught in the glass frame. So I squinted, held it closer, even compared it to the others. But the more I stared, the more wrong it felt. She wasn't made of shadows. She wasn't a reflection. She was there. And she was looking directly at the camera. Even without a face. I could feel it. That night, I left the photo inside a drawer and tried to forget about it, tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I kept imagining that empty corner of my living room with someone standing in it. The next morning, I walked past that same corner of my living room, the one where the blurry woman appeared, and I caught myself slowing down, just staring at it. Nothing there, just a wall, a lamp, and the old wooden cabinet. But the air felt heavier, like the corner was holding its breath. I tried to brush it off, told myself, all in my head. By noon, I decided to take the camera out again. Maybe the first picture was a fluke, a light leak, double exposure, whatever. I'm not an expert. So I stepped outside, pointed the camera at the snowy street, and pressed the shutter. Click. The film advance lever jammed. It refused to move. I tried again. Click. The shutter fired a second time, even though I hadn't advanced the film. That shouldn't happen. Then it clicked again and again. The camera kept firing on its own, like someone's invisible fingers were pressing the shutter. Click, 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 click. Rapid, mechanical, frantic. I yanked the battery compartment open, but there were no batteries inside. The camera wasn't even supposed to function without them. My breath froze in my throat. I turned the camera toward me, staring into the cold metal lens. The shutter stopped. For a few seconds, it was silent. Then, click. It fired one more time. A single picture. A deliberate picture. A picture of me. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped it. I shoved the camera into my coat pocket and practically sprinted to the developing shop downtown. The technician gave me a weird look when I handed over such a short roll. Already? But I didn't care. I needed to know what was on it. While the machine whirred, I tried to calm myself. It's just a machine malfunctioning, I repeated, just old hardware. But when the technician came back, his face was pale and he handed me the envelope. Inside were 6 photos, and every single one of them showed the same thing. My street, my living room, my backyard. Empty, except for the very last photo. The one that wasn't supposed to exist. It showed me standing on my driveway, and behind me, and almost touching my shoulder, stood the same faceless woman from the first picture. Closer now. Clearer. Like she was stepping forward. And this time, her head was tilted, as if she was examining me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the last photo in my head, the way she stood behind me, as if she'd been there the whole time, and I just never noticed. By 3 a.m., every corner of my house felt wrong. Every sound felt sharper. I kept the lights on. The camera sat on my kitchen table, pointed away from me like a guilty thing. I couldn't bring myself to touch it, but I also couldn't look away from it. Around 3:20 a.m., the house settled. That deep wooden groan old buildings make in the winter. Except this time it didn't stop. The sound dragged on, long and low, like someone sliding something heavy across the floor upstairs. My blood ran cold. I lived alone. I grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the staircase. The air got colder with each step. So cold, I could actually see my breath drifting upward, like faint smoke. Halfway up the stairs, something snapped in my chest. Not fear, instinct. A primal warning screaming, "Don't go up there," but I did. At the top of the stairs, everything was silent. Perfectly still. I turned toward the hallway and froze. Lying on the floor directly in the center of the carpet was a freshly developed photograph, my photograph. The white border was still warm. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared, trying to make sense of how it got there. Finally, with 2 shaking fingers, I picked it up. It was taken from the top of the stairs. The angle was unmistakable, the exact place where I was standing now. The picture showed me, on the staircase, taken just seconds ago. But the worst part wasn't that. Behind me in the photo, the faceless woman wasn't standing anymore. She was crawling down the steps toward me, hands clawing over each stair like she was dragging herself forward. Her head was inches from my back. I jerked around, shining the flashlight behind me. Nothing. The stairs were empty, but the light flickered, and for a split second, so fast I questioned it, I saw the faintest impression of handprints on the carpeted steps, as if something heavy had just pulled itself down, and then, from downstairs. Click! The sound of the camera firing on its own. I wasn't alone in the house anymore. I don't remember running down the stairs. I only remember the sensation of my body falling more than stepping, flashlight beam jerking wildly off the walls as I stumbled into the living room. The camera sat exactly where I left it on the table, except now the lens was pointed directly at me, and the little red indicator light was blinking. Recording. I didn't turn it on. My throat closed. I forced myself to walk closer. Slow and deliberate. The closer I got, the colder the air became. A sharp, metallic cold, like standing inside a freezer. Then I heard it, a soft, sickening sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. From the stairs, like bare palms dragging across wood. I spun around. The staircase was empty, but a shape lurked at the very top, just out of reach of the flashlight's beam. Not a full shape, just the hint of long hair hanging down, swaying slowly as if moved by a breeze that didn't exist. My knees locked. My legs refused to run. The scraping on the stairs grew faster, urgent, like someone dragging themselves down on elbows and knees at unnatural speed. I felt my heart slam against my ribs so hard it hurt. Scrape, 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 scrape. I raised the flashlight, just in time to see something yank out of sight at the top step, as if it had been waiting for me to look. Then the camera clicked again. Not a photo. A shutter reset, like it was preparing to take another. The blinking red recording light suddenly shut off, and then the camera's screen lit up with a new image. I didn't touch anything. The photograph that appeared wasn't taken from the table's angle. It was taken from the ceiling, looking down on me as if someone or something was perched above my head. I lifted the flashlight, slowly, terrified of what I'd see. The beam reached the ceiling. White paint, cobwebs. Nothing else. No. Wait. At the edge of the ceiling, near the corner, something moved. A single strand of long black hair dangled down, trembling slightly, as if someone was trying not to breathe. And then a whisper right above me. Not a voice, a breath. Click. Just the sound. A perfect imitation of my camera's shutter. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was outside, barefoot in the freezing night. The front door swinging open behind me like an invitation she expected me to accept. But the house wasn't the problem anymore, because as I stepped off my porch, something crunched under my foot. I looked down. Another photograph. Fresh, still warm. It showed me standing outside, and behind me, framed in the open doorway, she was finally facing the camera. Even without a face, she was smiling. I felt it. I froze where I stood. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Not even the wind moved. The world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. The photo in my hand shook violently. Not because it was moving, but because I was. My fingers felt numb as I lifted it closer. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did, and I wish I hadn't. The doorway behind me in the picture was pitch black except for her shape, long, twisted, and impossibly thin. Her hair spilled forward like wet seaweed, and her head hung unnaturally low, almost touching her chest. But what made me stagger backward wasn't her body. It was the fact that the house behind her wasn't my house. In the photo, the doorway belonged to somewhere else entirely. A rotted wooden frame, an unfamiliar hallway, a place I'd never been in my life. I turned around quickly. My door was different. Modern, white, with a brass handle. The one in the photo wasn't mine at all. That meant the picture had been taken in a place she wanted me to go, a place she was showing me. A message. My breath fogged in front of me as I stared at it, trying to understand. Then, the porch light flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. On the third flicker, a second photograph slid out from under the dark space beneath my porch, as if someone gently pushed it forward with a fingertip. My stomach dropped. I crouched slowly, painfully aware that something might be watching from under the porch. I reached for the new photo with trembling hands. This one was taken from behind me again, but now it showed me lifting the first picture. The timestamp in the corner was impossible. It was taken 3 seconds into the future. I felt dizzy. Behind me, the wooden boards under the porch creaked, something shifting its weight, slowly crawling closer to the edge. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Until a voice whispered from underneath the house, so soft it felt like it was inside my skull. "You came outside." Not threatening, not angry, almost pleased. A cold wave rolled through my chest. She wanted me outside. She wanted me away from the house. But why? I stepped back slowly, 1 inch at a time. Then something slid out from under the porch. Not a hand, not a face. A camera lens, dirty, scratched, staring up at me like an eye. My flashlight hit it, and I finally understood. She wasn't following me. She was hurting me. Somewhere. Someplace with that old wooden doorway. The one in the photo. And whatever was under the porch wasn't her. It was something else. Something that worked for her. The camera lens twitched, like an eyelid blinking. Then it angled upward and the shutter snapped. Click. This time, the flash was blinding. When my vision cleared, there was a new photograph on the ground at my feet, still smoking from the heat of being developed. I forced myself to look. The photo showed a cabin deep in a forest, lit dimly by a lantern hanging on a crooked tree. A place I'd never seen before. But beneath the image, written in smeared black ink, were 2 words, "Come alone." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Not after what I saw. Not after what whispered to me from under my own house. I sat at the kitchen table with every light on. The photos spread out on the surface like a crime scene I didn't understand. The cabin in the woods, the corner of the photo with the smeared ink, and the earlier shots, the ones taken from behind me. All of them pointed to the same thing. She wanted me somewhere, and whatever lurked under my porch was just the delivery system. By the time the sky finally began to gray with early morning light, something in me cracked. The kind of tension that can't hold forever. I had to know. Not because I wanted to, but because the not knowing would eventually kill me anyway. So I packed a small backpack, flashlight, water, phone, nothing useful, and headed out. The air outside felt thick, as if the humidity itself was watching. As I walked down the driveway, something caught my eye. The gravel path that led toward the woods behind my property, normally overgrown and barely visible, was suddenly clean, not just cleared, smoothed, recently used, as if something had crawled across it repeatedly all night. I swallowed hard and stepped onto the path. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but something colder inside me whispered, "If she wanted to hurt you, she already would have." That was the lie I chose to believe. I followed the path deeper into the trees. The morning light faded faster than it should have, as if the forest swallowed it whole. There was no wind, no birds, no insects, nothing living, except me. After 10 minutes, something changed. The trees ahead of me formed a narrow corridor, unnaturally symmetrical, like they had been bent into position. I hesitated, but when I glanced down, there were footprints on the dirt. My footprints, leading forward. But I hadn't been here before. Had I? A cold shiver crawled up my spine. The path curved left, then right, then dipped down into a shallow ravine. And there, finally, after what felt like an hour of walking, I saw it, the cabin from the photograph. Except it looked older, more broken, more wrong. The lantern in the picture wasn't there, but a hook hung from the same branch, swinging slightly even though there was no wind. The front door of the cabin was a rotted wooden frame, the same one from the earlier photo behind the creature, the one she stood in. My stomach twisted. Every part of me wanted to run. Then I saw something lying on the ground in front of the cabin steps. A new photograph. Fresh. Still crisp. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was a picture of me standing exactly where I was now. Frozen. Terrified. Except there was something else in the frame. The cabin door behind me was open in the photo. But in reality, it wasn't. I stared at the door. Closed. I looked back at the picture, open. Then, kriak! The door began to move. Slowly. Far too slowly. As if being pushed by something with long, weak fingers. My lungs locked up. My eyes watered. When the gap opened wide enough, a shape slid into view inside the darkness, not stepping, not walking, just descending. A long, pale arm stretched outward, reaching down toward the threshold. Then a hand appeared. Too many joints, too many knuckles, fingers bending in angles I didn't know were possible. It touched the floorboards and curled inward, inviting, like it wanted me to take its hand. I stepped back, and the forest behind me whispered with hundreds of tiny breaths, as if a crowd I couldn't see was urging me forward. The hand slowly opened, palm facing up. A gesture, an invitation. "You came alone?" The voice didn't come from the cabin. It came from everywhere, inside me, outside me, around the trees. I felt my legs moving on their own. Just one step. Just one. Then, the camera shutter clicked. Click. I spun around, but no one was behind me. The photo fell from above, drifting down like a leaf. I caught it. My heart stopped. It was an image of me standing in the cabin doorway, head turned towards something I couldn't see. And in the bottom corner, written in fresh ink, "Welcome home." I don't remember walking toward the cabin. I remember trying not to. I remember digging my heels into the ground, muscles shaking, heartbeats slamming against my ribs. But the forest had other plans. It was like gravity itself tilted toward that open doorway. Each step felt less like a choice and more like the inevitable outcome of something that had already been decided. When I reached the porch, the rotted wood dipped under my weight with a long, splintering groan. The air here felt colder, wrongly cold, like the kind of chill that comes not from weather but from absence. Absence of warmth, absence of life. The doorway yawned before me, waiting. Inside it was pitch black, not dark, black. A color of nothingness that swallowed the shape of the entrance itself. But as I stared, something inside the darkness shifted, a slow, rippling movement, like cloth dragging across a stone floor. Then, a hand emerged first, the same hand from before. Long, pale, knotted with joints that didn't belong in a human body. It braced itself on the doorframe, pulling the rest of the shape forward. But the shape didn't come out. It stayed hidden in the shadows, its outline barely breaking the darkness, like it was made of smoke instead of matter. I couldn't move. My body felt locked in place. Then the voice came again. This time, not around me, not inside me, but directly behind me. "You've been here before." Every hair on my neck lifted. I turned slowly and saw another cabin, or rather, the same cabin. Behind me, the same broken doorframe, the same leaning roof, the same hook with no lantern. But it wasn't there a moment ago. And then I understood the path hadn't led me to a place. It had led me into something else entirely, a loop, a snare, a trap disguised as geography. A second voice, higher, softer, came from the woods. "He doesn't remember yet." My chest tightened. Cold sweat rolled down my sides. I backed away from the doorway, only for something to brush my shoulder from behind. I spun around. Nothing. But when I looked at the ground, another photograph had appeared at my feet. I picked it up with shaking fingers. This photo was different. It wasn't a picture of me. It wasn't new. It was old, decaying, edges curled, colors washed out. The image showed a man standing on the same porch, in the same position, decades earlier. Same stance, same fear in his eyes, same cabin. The ink at the bottom had nearly faded away, but I could still make out two words: "Help me." And right behind that man, barely visible in the dark doorway, was the same curled hand resting on his shoulder. The hand lengthened in the photo, stretching, twisting until it wrapped around his throat. Then I saw it, in the corner of the image, blurred but unmistakable, my silhouette, standing where the photographer would have been. I took this picture, but that was impossible. Absolutely impossible. I staggered back, the photo trembling in my grip. From the doorway, something stepped half a foot closer. Not enough to reveal itself, but enough that I could now see the outline of its head. Long, tilted, watching, not moving toward me, not lunging, just waiting. Waiting for me to remember. The forest behind me rustled, not with wind, but with the soft, rhythmic sound of footsteps circling. 1, 2, 3, many. Invisible figures pacing just beyond sight, cutting off every escape. My breath hitched. My legs finally listened. I ran. But the path had changed. Trees stretched where open space once was. Branches curled inward, like the ribs of a giant creature closing around me. The forest didn't want me to leave. Something whispered just behind my ear. "You already came home once." I didn't look back. Not until the moment everything went wrong. Because when the trees finally opened again and daylight poured in, I found myself standing on my own porch, my house, my yard, my familiar railing. But all the lights inside were off, and on the front door, wedged under the handle, was a fresh photograph, still warm to the touch. It showed my bedroom, taken from inside the closet, and on the bottom corner, written in that same shaking ink, "I kept it ready for you." I didn't want to go inside. Every instinct screamed at me to back away from the porch, to drop the photograph, to run until my lungs tore. But fear does something strange to the human mind. It makes the familiar feel safer than the unknown, even when the familiar is the real danger. I pushed open my front door. It creaked, slow dragging, almost reluctant, like it was warning me. The house was dark, but not silent. There was a faint sound coming from deeper inside. Not breathing, not footsteps. A soft, steady sound. Shh, shh, shh. Like something sliding back and forth across a wooden surface. I forced myself toward the hallway, Only then did I realize the sound was coming from my bedroom, the same room shown in the photograph. The door to the room was half open, exactly as it had been in the picture. The shadows inside pulsed faintly with each sound. Shh, shh, shh. I reached the doorway and looked in, and my heart sank so fast it felt like it dropped out of my body. The closet door was moving, not swinging, not trembling, sliding open, then shutting, sliding open, then shutting, over and over, as if pulled by an unseen hand on the other side. Open a few inches, closed. Open a few inches, closed. Calm, mechanical. Patient, like something inside was practicing, rehearsing, waiting for me to step closer. My throat went dry. My fingers went numb. I whispered into the darkness, "Who's in there?" The closet door froze mid-slide. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that felt like a held breath. Then, softly, from inside the closet, came a knock. Once, twice, 3 slow knocks, polite, as if asking permission. I backed away, but the floorboard behind me squeaked, and the thing inside reacted instantly. The closet door swung fully open. The room didn't change, nothing jumped out, nothing crawled, but the darkness in that small closet was the same unnatural black I'd seen inside the cabin doorway. A color not made by shadows, but by absence. Something inside the dark shifted. Just once. Just enough for me to know it wasn't empty. I stepped back toward the hall, and I felt breath on the back of my neck. Slow, cold, deliberate, like someone leaning in close enough to smell my fear. I whipped around. No one there. But another photograph lay on the floor as if dropped at my feet. My hand shook as I picked it up. This photo was taken seconds ago. I could tell because the edges were still warm. It was an image of me, standing exactly where I stood now. Except, in the photo something was behind me. A tall figure, too tall, leaning halfway out of the closet, its long fingers reaching toward the back of my head. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't looking at a monster. I was looking at a memory. A replay of something that had already happened, but that I somehow didn't remember. The figure in the photograph wasn't attacking me. It was touching me gently, almost lovingly, like it knew me, like it had done this before. My chest tightened as a tunnel of cold ran down my spine. Then, shh, the closet door began sliding shut again, slow, quiet, patient, as if inviting me to pretend nothing had happened, as if waiting for the next time. I stepped back from the room, pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't take my eyes off the closet, not once. But the moment I crossed into the hall, my bedroom door slammed shut behind me. The house fell silent again, but not empty. For empty. Because as I headed toward the living room, heart still racing, I noticed something that wasn't there before. My coat rack had 3 coats on it. I only owned 2. And the third one was dripping wet, as if someone had just come inside from the woods. I don't know exactly when I woke up, only that the storm had finally passed. The sky outside the broken windows was a dull, washed-out gray, the kind that makes everything feel heavier and more hollow. My clothes were stiff with dried mud, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I pushed myself upright. The corridor was silent, too silent, like the entire orphanage was holding its breath. The last thing I remembered was that thing, those wet, shuddering footsteps closing in behind me as I tried to crawl away. But it wasn't here now. No breathing, no clicking, no dragging sound, just... For a moment, I dared to hope it was over. But then I saw something that froze me completely. Down the corridor, hanging from a rusted nail, was my ID badge. It was dripping, as if someone had just washed it. I felt sick. I didn't even remember losing it. When I reached for it, a cold gust of wind slipped across my neck. So cold, it felt like a hand. I didn't turn around, not yet. Because on the floor beneath my badge were wet footprints. Small ones, child-sized. But they weren't tracking outward. They were tracking toward me. I forced myself to look behind me. Nothing. just the long hallway leading back into the ruined dormitory. But the footprints were still fresh, still glistening, still forming, one after another, slowly, as if someone invisible was walking right toward me. Then, a soft knock echoed from the dorm entrance. Not a human knock. It was slow, off rhythm, wet, knock, knock. I stepped back, my breath stuck in my throat. That's when I heard the whisper, right by my ear, so close I felt its breath. Don't leave me alone again. I spun around, still nothing. But the footprints were now only a few steps away. I didn't wait, didn't think, didn't breathe. I sprinted down the corridor so hard my boots slipped on the wet tiles. Behind me, the knocks turned into scraping, fast, frantic, dragging across the floor as something chased after me. I didn't look back once. I charged into the main hall, grabbed the splintered emergency door, and slammed my body against it until the warped metal gave way. The cold outside air hit me like a slap. I ran into the open yard, then I stopped. Because standing in the middle of the field, right where the fog was thickest, was a small figure, a child-sized silhouette, facing me, not moving, not breathing, just waiting. And the fog behind it started to twist, as if something much larger was hiding inside it. I took one step back, and the child took one step forward. I froze. My heart hammered in my chest like it was trying to escape. The fog thickened around the small figure, swallowing the ground beneath its feet. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. The child-sized silhouette tilted its head. It didn't have a face, not really, just a blank, smooth surface where features should be. And then, from the haze behind it, I saw it. Her. The faceless woman from all the photographs. The one who had haunted my house, my yard, my steps, my nights. She wasn't walking. She was floating, drifting across the ground, her hair spilling like black smoke around her. The closer she came, the more the air burned cold, like winter inside a freezer. Then I noticed the camera in my hand. I hadn't realized I was still holding it. It fired on its own. Click. A flash of light blinded me, and when it faded, I saw the photos fluttering around my feet. Every single one. The first one in my living room. The one of me on the driveway. The cabin, the closet. Every photograph alive with moving shadows and shapes. The images weren't still. They were rewriting themselves, showing moments I had never lived, and moments I had. The faceless woman stopped a few feet away, her head tilting toward me. Then, soft as snow falling, she whispered, "Take it or stay." I didn't understand at first. Then the camera clicked again, almost pleading. I realized the photos, the camera, all of it. It was a doorway, a passage. And she was offering me a choice. Either I stayed forever in this looping nightmare she controlled, or I let the camera record one final image, the truth of her. I raised the camera, trembling. She drifted closer, her blank face almost within reach. And I pressed the shutter. Click. The light was blinding. I felt my body lift, spin, dissolve. For a moment, the world went utterly white. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the living room floor. Morning sun spilled across the carpet. Everything was normal. My old film camera sat on the table, silent and still. No photographs anywhere. I exhaled, shaking. It seemed over. But then I noticed something tucked under the couch. A single photograph. I picked it up. It was of my living room. But behind me in the far left corner stood a shadowy figure, faceless, just like before. Only this time, it looked directly at the camera. And I could feel it waiting for the next shutter. If this story kept you watching, there's another real horror waiting for you. Click on the screen and don't watch it alone.